Let's shrink that down. Come in here. Sign back into Azure. I'll be with y'all in just a second. And hey, good morning. It is Tuesday, November 5th. It's a big day here in the United States, and I need coffee. So bear with me. I'm just going to walk over here and fetch some coffee from the fridge while I say hello and all of that stuff. Like I said, it's Tuesday, November 5th. My name is Rob, around here, that developer dad, and I'm building applications with .NET. Yesterday, I got started moving my data storage technology from Azure SQL database over to Azure Table storage. And there's a reason for that. Azure Table storage doesn't go to sleep after a period of inactivity. And for the amount of data and the kind of data that I'm going to be storing, it's significantly less expensive and works just fine for what I need. So if we go into user objects, let me share my screen. Here we go. We can see that I've moved a whole ton. Well, all of the characters that I had originally had over in SQL into Azure Table Storage. I got that sorted out last night. And I actually have one of the queries working for me in the main app. Now, I don't have the ability to load NPCs or save them yet because I do need to make some changes inside the actual application. I do need to start passing userId up to the resource access components with my requests. And yesterday, I actually did alter NPC access a little bit to accept this optional parameter here on load NPC and save NPC. So let's get these plumbed out through the manager and down to the UI. And then we'll see that those are working correctly. And when I had originally designed this, I was trapped in my enterprise .NET developer world that I came up through, as many of us have, and thought, well, SQL is the only way to go for storage, and silly me, it's not. I'm going to take this off because it's actually warm in here today. And then I didn't actually start seriously considering other storage technology until I saw what running SQL, even a serverless install of SQL, was going to cost me to have running constantly. So we've got our resource access thing kind of sorted. The code is in place, but I haven't been able to fully test it yet because I don't have, hey, what's up, Scott? Because I don't have that userId passing up to the storage provider. So we need to come down to the manager, go into the townsfolk manager, and we're going to start here. Op result look? Yeah, just a second. That's a framework component. And that lives where? Here we go. So what it is we've got the base op result, and that just returns either it was successful, or yeah, it is absolutely a result pattern. The interesting op result is the generic form that carries a typed payload. And I've just got this copy errors 2. And this allows me to more easily propagate any errors that got attached during a process to downstream, or rather upstream instances of the op result. I'm hoping with some work I'm doing in the admin system to rework how I'm doing this result pattern so that it's a lot less intrusive. Because right now, I feel like it's polluting the code and wrapping a pain in the neck button around things instead of what I prefer to do, which is wrap an easy button. So inside my townsfolk manager, I need to find, I've got filter, get NPC options. I need load townsperson. And this is currently just taking in the townsperson ID. Now there's some new stuff coming in .NET 9, and you can kind of do it in .NET 8 if you use an add-on NuGet package. The NuGet package that I just found out about is called one of, and it would let me change this to a task that is one of either a nullable townsperson or an IEnumerable of error objects or whatever. I don't like throwing exceptions around my stack because that muddies up the stack quite a bit. So load townsperson, it's currently only expecting a townsperson ID. I'm going to need to modify my contract. So we'll come up to townsfolk manager. And this hasn't got a published interface yet. So save townsperson, string user ID. Load townsperson is also now going to expect a string user ID. Save. Let's go back to my manager. We'll add the missing parameter there. Add it here. And where's save? Here it is. Townsperson, string user ID. Okay, to NPC access model. Save NPC is going to also receive the user ID. Now, we're still not going to be able to execute because I've just broken binary compatibility between my API and the UI. So I'm going to pop out to my character workloads. And generate is fine. Get NPC JSON, describe NPC. We need, okay, we're already accepting the user ID here. Good. We need the user ID here because I'm actually partitioning my Azure table on the kind of thing that's being stored and the owner's user ID. So just to show you, partition key on the Azure table that stores all of the user created objects. It's prefaced with the type of object and then the user's or the owner's user ID. And then row key is just an arbitrary thing that actually doesn't make it out to the UI or the rest of the system. All right, so I've got this. I need to come out to my character workloads. Yes, I know. I'm not compliant. Describe. Generate. Yeah, it can be. It's sort of I guess you could call it almost like a hack around that we can use until we actually get this concept of discriminated type unions. And I believe that's coming in .NET 9. But I'm not going to start using those features probably until next year when we get .NET 10, because I stick to LTS versions of the framework just because I'm superstitious. So NPC manager, save townsperson, it requires that user ID. Good. And I need to come down here to load NPC or load townsperson. String user ID. User ID. There we go. And now from my UI's API, and this Game Tools API workload provider is basically a BFF for my Blazor client. What it does is it takes all of the managers and uses those to compose the actual workloads that are provided by the user interface, rather than have the user interface be aware of multiple back-end services. It consolidates the back-end services that the UI cares about into one single API, and provides those. So here's my Blazor client, and I'm just going to rebuild. We're going to screen test this. The screen testing is where you make a change and, well, frequently you make a change and deploy, and then you find the bugs by people screaming at you. This time, in this case, I'm using the compiler to scream at me. Here we go. So load townsperson, and I should have a user ID kicking around at this level somewhere. Let's take a look at filter townsfolk. Filter, okay, so that's what it's being built up there. Do I character workloads, iLogger, NPC options? I don't know that I have. Oh, I do bring in the app state provider. So on save NPC, let's come down to where load is. Let's pull in just the thing that we need. Screw it. Pass that along. Now, I haven't done what I usually do in these cases when I'm starting to expand out my parameter list, especially on public methods. I'll start building request objects. But I haven't got there yet. If I have to add another parameter to these methods, that's when I'm going to start considering the use of request objects. If I ever get into disconnected messaging, we're definitely going to have to start using request objects. All right. Build, rebuild, because whoever's using load NPC is going to need to pass that user ID. Here we go. Excluding CT. CT being context. Oh, cancellation token. That's another thing I got to get in the habit of, man. I've been doing like on-prem synchronous enterprise development for decades, and I've never used cancellation token, and I really oughta, especially with everything going async the way it is. I need, those are the user-based options. Do I have a app state provider here? I do. Good. So I can come down here and string userId equals app state provider. No. Oh, what's it called? What did I call that thing? It's up in the properties. Reroll, NPC client model, NPC page states, app context. Dot get current user. Dot user ID. Excuse me. Now let's make sure our app context is accounted for in the guard clause. NPC services. I do not currently get paid while searching for a job. My unemployment insurance ran out, a couple of months ago, and I've been living off of savings for close to the past 6 months. Unemployment insurance in my state is a joke. Even at my former salary, which was nicely over 6 figures a year, my unemployment insurance was less than $300 a week, which, it stretched out my savings a little bit, but yeah. However, once I launch this thing, I expect to be making, tens of dollars a month. At least in the beginning. And that's, honestly, it's enough to pay for the hosting. So I'll be okay with that if app context is null. Now I've got some stuff around there. Oh, guard app context exists. Never mind. I can just come up to here and say guard app context exists. What other guard clauses do I have? Guard user exists. Okay, you going to save the world? And I can actually just say guard user exists. There we go. Now I can move my null forgiving operator over here. There. Now, I don't like using that null forgiving operator unless immediately before I use it, I know I'm executing code that either makes sure it's there or instantiates it, and if it can't instantiate it, it blows up the app. So that's why I've got these guard methods. And theoretically, let's do one more screen. Ah, that's interesting. I haven't monkeyed with that. Yeah, I don't like using Pragma. I hate using Pragma. The only time I ever use Pragma is if I'm working with a library that, oh, okay, not Pragma, is if I'm working with a library like Semantic Kernel, which is constantly attributed with experimental. Ah, remember not null something. Okay. Neat. Neat. I'll have to check that. I will absolutely have to check that. All right. So, derpy, 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 derp. We don't have any more compiler errors. Let's run the app. Now, after I've got this done, I'll have the beginnings of a pattern for using Azure Table Storage. Now, still trying to load usage because it's over in SQL, and SQL is sleeping, but I should be able to view. Awesome. Let's try creating a new one. Yeah, here we go. I'll take a female halfling innkeeper who retired from being a folk hero. And these animations are all pure CSS and SVG. It's thinking. Oh no, yeah, this was a while back that I created this. All right, and here's Lyra, and let's make sure it saves. And we got an unhandled error. That's okay. Oh no, we lost her. Let's come down to the bottom. Okay, we're gonna have to step through that. And we are going to load NPC. Where is save NPC? Here we are. I'm vaguely aware of error boundary. I just started using Blazor with this application. Excuse me. Oh, I know why it exploded, because it was trying to update my quota, which is still in SQL, and SQL isn't awake yet. That makes sense. That makes sense. Custom error boundary that inherits error boundary, override on error method, log the exception around app body and layout file. Oh yeah, that is super nice. I do want to improve the error handling and reporting in the front end at some point, but it's also my belief that errors should be exceptional. So let's find out what's going on here. There we go. I'm going to just fully reload this. And there's actually something I want to do up in the table access on filter dot. I don't think I can order by here. I do not use Serilog yet. I have in the past, and I really, really like it. Okay, so that's bringing me back that. Can I order by? By NPC entity dot. You dope. Order by E dot. Sometimes IntelliSense and Copilot are a little bit too smart for their britches. And sometimes I am not. E dot created date, but I want it order by descending. There we go. Yeah. Serilog's really, really nice. I still need to figure out what the logging and monitoring story is going to look like fully for this. I don't want to have to roll with a full-on Azure Monitor instance because logs can get stupidly huge if you're not judicious about what gets retained for how long and so on. All right, so these don't look like they are being ordered. Oh, because of course. Yeah, that's exactly what I would want to do. And I think I would want to actually have different logs for live features versus preview features. Because when I do get back to, when I finish up the port from SQL to Azure Tables, and then excuse me. Once I finish the port from SQL to Azure Tables, and I do want to experiment with a different AI model a little bit, and maybe do a little bit of iteration on the prompt. After I go live, there's all kinds of enhancements that I want to make. And one of the things that I'm going to do during my soft launch, and perhaps even after my soft launch, is for people that I know personally that sign up as a subscriber to this thing, I'm going to offer them like a secret higher subscription tier, which gives access to pre-release features as soon as they're stable, before anybody else gets them. I'm going to have a private Discord channel on that Developer Dad Discord server, which I haven't launched yet either. It exists, I just haven't started publishing or publicizing it yet. But I think my database should be open now. Let's take a look. Here's this. Let's just take a quick peek. and see if it's online. Okay, good. It is online. Because I think that's what failed when I tried to save before. This NPC is not retired. I think that's the default resolution on a MacBook Air. I think. I'm not sharing the entire screen, of course. Let's roll. Dwarf Blacksmith. Yeah, sure, why not? Yeah, I'm not running at 2K. And I've also got my font size blown up considerably, at least in the code windows. All right, so let's generate the AI description. There we go. And we'll save. And let's just trace this out. Set owner. Proxy result. Oh, I meant to step out through there. Okay, proxy result was false. I have one error. And it's a bad request. Okay, so let's try it again. And if it says bad request, that probably means it's up inside save. Because I know the table client gets grumpy. Yep. Yeah, I basically just pulled the current line cursor up to the top. So let's show next statement. Yeah, I just pulled the cursor up here. My NPC model shouldn't be altered. Age 60. NPC model. Let's take a look here. ID is null. That's fine. Okay, the user ID is there. Good. Let's step in. Get user limits. Here's my quota ID. And we're just setting up the op result. Pull the townsperson. Save NPC. Let's go in here. Oh, like a dope. Oh, duh. Is new character. And this is still in character workloads. Good. So we're going to pop in here. Do this. Turn it into an access model. Okay. Good. Step in. Here's that. Calculate the partition key. That's correct. Got my table client. Bad request. Invalid input. Not valid. Oh, I think I know what it is. So here we're trying to pull the entity by the NPC ID, which is currently null because it hasn't been saved yet. All right. If npc.npcid does not equal null, we'll try to fetch the entity. Save, go. Because Azure Table Storage doesn't have any concept of an identity column, and NPC ID was an identity column over in SQL, I have to do some compensating stuff in the table provider. So I don't want retired. Role Dwarven Brewer. Whoa, that's profiling. Well, female? No. Fun fact. Prior to whenever the witch hunts were, the 16 or 1700s, the people in the populations that did the most beer making were women. And then men decided that they loved beer and that they could make money from making beer. So they decided that the women who made beer were also the weird ladies that lived at the edge of the village and grew herbs and people would go to when they got sick and stuff like that. And so they started accusing the women who made the beer of witchcraft and took over the brewing industry for centuries. So yeah, let's bring back a female brewer in our fantasy world. And as a matter of fact, the big pointy hats were the hats that the alewives would wear when they would go into town with their barrels of beer so that people could spot them through the crowds of the marketplace and know where to go get their beer. I learned that from my wife, who does a podcast with a friend of hers on the history of the art, history, and science of fancy drinking. She learned that and told me that story. And Brunhilde Stone Brew is the perfect name for a lady brewer who is a dwarf. I love that. I like that. Thank you, AI. So I'm going to bounce through up until the point where I land in my, oh, it looks like we got there. Go back to the list, and there's Brunhilde right here. And we can view her, and my NPC table storage is working nicely. Now, because I am using some relational goo for things like quotas and all that other stuff. Let's take a look at resource access. We've got metered usage access. This is my abstractions. And here's my resource models, user subscription, user quota, token consumption, and resource quota. Now, token consumption is going to be a tricky one because if I bounce over to Azure and I go into the query editor, and I'll continue as me. I've got select star from usage dot token consumption. And we run this. Where's my grabby thing? There should be a handle where I can pull these results up. Maybe not. Okay, so I've got my inference times, all of this stuff, model ID. Yeah. I'm going to want to keep this as a log. But I'm also going to want to shrink this on a fairly regular basis. And like squish up the aggregates and stuff like that. And I'm probably going to want to aggregate by user ID, parts of that inference time, model ID, and the function name. Okay, I'm going to need to keep that as a log. Fine. Let's pull this back over here. And actually, let's talk about this migration from SQL to table storage. Excuse me. So I've got this one userdata.npcs table over here. And that's been reworked into the user data schema is manifesting as the user objects table in my storage account. So let's open up a second Azure window here. And it wants me to sign in, so I'll do that on the other screen. And we'll hit the storage browser and just look at the tables. So right now I've got this user objects table over in table storage, and I'm going to partition that on the user object kind or type and their ID. And that'll give me a nicely distributed set of partitions as necessary. My usage schema, I think I'm going to be able to collapse most of this down to user subscription or a users table. And what I think I'm going to do for that users table is, oh, something just blinged at me. What was that? That felt like a Teams notification. I don't even use Teams. I have Teams, but I don't use it. You got to pay me to use that. So I need to start thinking about migrating the other tables out of SQL and into table storage. So let's talk about schemas. What's a good thing to use for that? Well, we'll have this up for reference. And I think I'm just going to use a new note. Here we go. And we'll just pop this out into a new window. And table storage thoughts. User objects. Will store all user created objects. Cool. We partition key will be constructed from a combination of the type of user object and the user's ID. Users will store the user object. Now, we can't store complex objects in Azure Table Storage as is, and I don't want to flatten them necessarily, but we're going to have partition key will be users, and I'm going to say instead of users, I'm going to call this schema or that table business objects. Partition key will be users. Row key will be assigned from user ID in Entra. Will have fields for ID collection, JSON, current subscription, JSON, which will contain basic info about subscription and their current quota values. Activity. Yep, activity, JSON, deserializes to an array of actions that have been taken against their subscription. May expose some aggregates such as renewal, sublength, times renewed, times paused, etc. If I need so current subscription, subscription activity, basic info about the subscription, current quota values, and budgets. Yeah. And then each one of those fields will deserialize into a complex object that will become a property on the main user object. We will also have partition key, users, and let's bump that up to a subheading. This becomes a heading. This becomes a heading. Partition key. Templates. No. Catalog. Templates. No. You know what? I'm going to have exactly one subscription specification that is relevant to operating the DM's familiar, and I'm just going to hard code that. Yeah, it really doesn't. I'm going to hard code it inside the resource access component so that I'll actually have a method to call to get it, and that keeps me from painting myself in a corner for when I do want to offer other kinds of subscriptions. But yeah, the template, that's going to be, I'm just going to hard code that for now. And partition key, and let's say consumption log. Row key can't be arbitrary. Good. Screw it. Will contain columns for similar columns to the usage.token consumption SQL table. All right. As a matter of fact, I'm going to choose to not be lazy and just list these bad boys out now. Now, the ID doesn't matter. User ID is string. Inference time is a date time. Function name is a string. Prompt tokens is an int. Completion tokens is an int. Model ID is a string. ID collection. And we're going to have Entra ID. We're also going to have ecom ID, because when they become a customer at the ecom service provider, they're going to be issued an ID there as well. So I'm going to want to store that here in case I need to send it. Where's my note? Here's my note. Display name. Just going to be a string. Anywhere I say JSON, I should say JSON string. There we go. Yeah. Current subscription. Let's take a look at user subscriptions. Period start. Date time. Period end. Date time. Excuse me. Created date. Date time. Updated date. Date time. Unsubscribed date. Date time nullable. And the updated date should also be a date time nullable. And current status will be a string. And I need a word to give to the property that is going to hold information about time that they have left if they pause their subscription. Hang on, I'm getting texts from Mrs. Protein bars, yes. Please. Okay. So current status and resume data? No. Pause, resume data. JSON string will most often be null. Current quota values and budgets. Let's take a look at user quotas. And we'll pop this back up. We're going to have quota template ID as an int. Current budget is an int. Consumed budget is an int. Created date is a date time. Updated date is a date time. And all this is going to have is activity kind, which is a string. And activity date as a string. And reference string, any kind of transaction ID or message ID from the ecom service. And there we go. Subscription activity, it's just a log of changes that have been made to the subscription over its lifetime. All right, and I think we've got our data model. So this afternoon, I'm going to start building out this data model so that I can express this and access it in the UI. And this is going to be an adventure because I'm not sure how much of this I'm actually using right now. I know I'm using user quotas. Let's take a look here. User subscriptions. Let's take a peek. Okay, I've got this stuff. User quotas is here. And of course I have to spell the table name right. All right. And then what does quota templates look like? Run. Yeah, it's just NPC storage, NPC AI detail. And this stuff, I think I'm just going to hard code it directly into the assembly. For now, I don't feel like I need to formalize this until I release a new feature that might have a new quota attached to it or what have you. And when I do that, I'm going to have to re-release things anyway. And most of this stuff is going to be handled by the admin system anyway. Excuse me. I think, just to recap the things that we did this morning, we have successfully tested the Azure Table change for the application. And here it comes again. There we go. Our NPCs are now being stored in a much faster, much cheaper way of storing these things. We can save to it, we can read from it, we can pull specific characters back from it. So that functionality has been fully restored, and we are good there. We have a preliminary concept. We have a concept of a plan for setting up the business objects table, how it's going to be partitioned, how we're going to store these objects. Let me just boop that with a subheading. And the only thing I really care about displaying in this application is the Entra ID. That's about it for now. Yeah, I think we're good. I think we can call this a solid session. This afternoon, I'll start standing up these types from the point of view of our let's just go ahead and add the project right now. New project, class library. Make sure it goes in the correct folder. And it is going to be game tools dot metered usage access dot Azure Tables provider. Next, create. Let's add some project references to this guy. We're going to need devdad.framework, I'm pretty sure. I'm going to need metered usage access. And that's really it. Yeah. Yeah, that's all I'm going to need there. So cool. Let's say okay to this. And then, yeah, this afternoon we're going to pick up and we're going to start building out the models. And yeah, we'll get started implementing this. And then once this is done, I won't have any more SQL stuff to port over. I'll be able to write my migration script down here in my table storage test. Right now it's hooked up to NPC access. I'll just rip out all the code in program CS and re-reference the metered usage access and its two implementations. Once I've tested that table access is working properly, I'll then create a SQL client, pull in the data, write it over to the table access, and that should be about done. So let's see here. I started doing this, yesterday morning? So approximately a day's work. And I'm not even a super duper expert at Azure Tables. So approximately a day's work to get get the NPCs moved over. I expect the usage stuff to take a little bit longer just because there's more tables and more concepts and more stuff to have to deal with. But yeah, not bad. I dig it. So I'm going to break. I'm going to come back at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. It is currently 11:15. I will see you this afternoon. Thanks for hanging out, and happy coding.